الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. We have many of us who are struggling with the question of celebrating birthdays. Is it permissible for us to celebrate birthdays? Can we? Before we get to the answer of that together, we'll go back and, of course, like any issue, you need to go to the root of it, where it started. The concept of celebrating birthdays started off with the Egyptians back during the time of the pharaohs, al-Fara'ina. And it was more related to the coronation day, meaning the day where a king is crowned, being the governing body in country, in the land. And of course, that is not the point of the celebration of the crowning day. It's not for Pharaoh to assume the duties of governing the land more than it is celebration of him becoming a god. So it is related to celebrating him becoming a god by being crowned as a king. Now, this very concept was assumed also by the Greeks. Now, the Greeks had many gods. And whenever they take up a god, and each god serves a certain duty. You have the god of love, the god of war, the god of astronomy, the god of the rain. Each duty has a god. And then who appoints those gods? They made up and created their own gods. And for each god that they've created, it has its own birthday. And then this is why you will find, for instance, the god of love, it is celebrated. The god of war is celebrated. The god of this and that and the other. And each god has got its own name. So now, by they taking up that same concept from the pharaohs or in the Egyptians, and then they also celebrated the Day of the Gods. And this is how now the concept with time changed to where people started celebrating their own birthdays. So we started off as being the birth of a god with the Egyptians, the birth of gods with the Greeks, and now it's the birth of the person. Now, does it have any religious connotation to it or origin to it? Excuse me. No, it doesn't. It is completely pagan practice. Pagan meaning it has no original religious source to it. But rather, this is how we started from the pagans. And even with the Christians. Now, the Christians represent close to 3 billion, meaning it's a 3 followed by 9 zeros. This is the population of the Christians around the world. And most of the sects of the Christian community accepts it as a practice. Although there are some sects like Jehovah's Witness, they do not celebrate it because it has this pagan origin to it. Now, with time, being that the popularity syndrome, as you may call it, is when you have the popular person doing one practice, everybody follows what the popular person is doing. So we find that the Christian community is the one that celebrates a birthday, and this is how it is perceived around the world, as if the birthday starts with the Christians. Well, when it has no origin in the Christian faith in the first place. Now, everybody's following what the Christians are doing as if it is theirs and as if they are advocating for it, when in fact it's not. It's not Christian practice. That said, when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, he did not follow what everybody's doing in Medina. He found that the Jews, this is the population of Medina, you have Jews and you have polytheists, the mushrikeen, the Arab polytheists. And each group have their own Eid, celebrations that they celebrate, and many of them. The Prophet ﷺ said, what is this? They said, this is the Eid of this and that one is the Eid of this and that. So each group have their own number of Eids that they used to celebrate. He said, ﷺ, as for us as Muslims, we only have two Eids. One, when we give thanks to Allah Ta'ala for bestowing upon us the gift of fasting, which is a gift from Allah. Fasting is a gift. Ramadan ends and you celebrate that gift of fasting because it is an investment for your akhirah. To show your gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, you celebrate the end of Ramadan with the Eid. Then you have Eid that where you show your gratitude to Allah Ta'ala for the gift of Hajj. At the end of Hajj, you celebrate with Al-Adha. So you will have the Hajj Eid is Al-Adha. The Ramadan and fasting Eid is Eid al-Fitr. Then by, subhanallah, the scholars said that to celebrate Salah, the prayer in of itself. How do you celebrate the gift of Salah? You celebrate it by attending Friday prayer. Because this is basically the celebration, the weekly celebration of the prayer in of itself. But although the Prophet ﷺ did not really explicitly and verbally said that Friday is, but he highly recommended attending the Friday prayer. The point. The Prophet ﷺ did not, in other words, follow what the popular person is doing in Medina. Did not follow neither the Jews nor the Arab polytheists in Medina. Rather that he set the tone for what it should be for me as a Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ in this regard, mind you, we should never think that the Prophet ﷺ is missing any area of what needs to be done, meaning legislations across the board that have to do with the blueprint of your life, meaning the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is, nothing is missed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covered every single area, to the point that the Prophet ﷺ at one point told the Sahaba, when they kept asking him, Ya Rasulullah, what about this, what about that, what about this, what about that? He says, Daruni ma taraktukum. Leave me alone for as long as I leave you be. In regards to the legislation, he says, majority of those who came before you, meaning the communities that came before you, what harmed them the most is the fact that they have excessive questions for their prophets, and the more questions they ask, the harder it becomes on them when Allah Ta'ala legislates and ordains a command based on them asking questions in that regard. But he says, leave it be, meaning what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is well aware of what works for you best, and He does not, مَا أَشْهَدْتُهُمْ خَلْقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. I did not make them be an eyewitness for the creation of the heavens and the earth, وَلَا خَلْقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ, nor their own creation. وَمَا كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذَ الْمُضِلِّينَ عَضُدًا. I did not need anybody to really help me, to support me so I can do any of this. And the idea of us thinking, even in the back of our mind, that maybe, this is something that it's okay. We're missing the whole point and missing the big picture, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the deen, meaning the blueprint sent to you, is kamil. Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum. It is perfect and complete when you have something that you describe as being complete. And it's not me or you describing the Quran, your blueprint and reference point as being complete. Allah Ta'ala is the one who described it as being complete, meaning there is nothing missing. Even the tiniest of things that you or I or anybody else would think it's okay to add this or take away from this, that is your own misconception. It is very, to say the least, you are really going wrong. You're going wrong about that concept in of itself, let alone what the outcome of that, meaning when you act it out. Now we come to celebrating birthdays. The Prophet ﷺ, you wanted to celebrate birthday? Go ahead and celebrate the birthday. Go ahead and celebrate. But how do you celebrate your birthday? You celebrate your birthday the way the Prophet ﷺ did it, based on the concept of what the birthday represent. The birthday represent a day where you need to reflect upon your 24 hours, let alone a week, let alone a month, let alone a year. What is it that you've done for yourself with Allah Ta'ala for the hereafter for that whole year? Reflect upon that. If it is good things, show gratitude. Say thank you to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. If it is when you review and self-accountability is on the plate, and you look at exactly where you're falling short of the mark, what you need to do and all of that, this is where you need to have a plan of attack, a plan of work, a plan of rectifying, of fixing what needs to be fixed. And nobody can be more aware of where your shortcomings are, areas of weaknesses, areas that need work more than ourselves. We know ourselves better than anyone else. And with that being the case, when the day that your birthday comes, it is a day where you should reflect upon what happened in the whole year, and then see exactly where you need to work for what? For the sake of checks and balances. Checks and balances. You don't run a business without looking into, balancing your books. Otherwise, who knows that you are going in the red without you being even aware of that. But we are well aware of and always on point when it comes to whenever we run a business, a successful business is a business that considered accountability. And you see exactly where you stand and where you're headed and what you got. What do you have to work with? Same thing when you're looking for the akhirah, we should treat it as if one of us would treat his own business, because at the end of it, either we are going to be running a successful business for ourselves, for the akhirah, or, na'udhu billah, a failed business. But the point, celebrate it. How do you celebrate it? The way the Prophet ﷺ did. He was asked, Ya Rasulullah, why do you constantly fast Monday? He says, because that's a day where I was born. I was born on a Monday. So it is a way for me to say thank you to Allah. And what better way to say thank you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting you not only life, but also granted you ni'amahu zahirata wa batina, bounties bestowed upon you that are hidden and those that are exposed, meaning those that you were aware of, and many that you and I are not even aware of. And those bounties require gratitude from our end. And one way, the best gift that you could present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day is fasting, because it is the most beloved act of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, the more we are driven by the concept of the following what the popular person is doing, the more we are going about it the wrong way. And then instead, we have Rasulullah ﷺ as uswa, as a role model to follow, not what the popular person is doing. And for the sake of what? Because that day is a day of accountability, not a day of cakes and inviting people and all that. What is the point of all of that? We have no idea. Why do you do all of this? Why do you celebrate all of that? The Prophet ﷺ, so you don't see that he's not the person to say, well, Eid is just an open thing and it's a personal thing. No. He says, you celebrating tons of Eids. The Jews in Medina did. And the polytheists, the mushrikeen, the Arab polytheists in Medina celebrated many. He could have said, you know what? Maybe I should do that, which he did, as a matter of fact, with the Jews. But it has a beautiful connotation to it though. Ashura. When he came to Medina, he found that the Jews were celebrating Ashura. He asked why. He says that we celebrated it to give thanks to Allah Ta'ala for saving Musa alayhi salam from Fir'aun. And he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I'm more worthy of showing gratitude to Allah Ta'ala for saving my brother Musa than all of you. And he highly recommended the fasting of the day of Ashura. But because of what it stands for again, not because he is the popular person is doing something and I will follow what that popular person. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who follow the best guidance whenever they are given it. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وصلى الله وسلم على محمد الحمد لله رب العالمين.